welcome to Artist Alchemy again. My name is Steph. I'm a fantasy photographer from Lincoln in the UK.
And I'm John Cruz. I'm a portrait photographer in Philadelphia in the US.
Amazing. I'm
And
Luna.
today,
Oh,
go
sorry,
for it.
go on.
Today we've got our guest on. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Luna or Amanda, and I do a bit of photography, a bit of design, a bit of everything really. So I like to call myself a multi-potentialite, and I'm in the UK in Lincolnshire.
Okay. So tell me about the nickname Luna. Like, where did that come from? Is that from childhood, or is that?
No, so I used to sing, so I still sing now. So I'm in a band with my partner, and we kind of do retro rock and roll, sort of very 50s inspired covers and originals. But I used to sing before that on my own on a different circuit, and I was known as Luna because I used to croon, so Luna the crooner. So yeah, and that kind of stuck, and then sort of as many people then got to know me as Luna, as Amanda, and it just stuck. So there you go. Yeah, but like I say, I'll answer those things.
I love it. It sounds very mysterious and artsy, which I love.
Yeah, it's a lot more interesting than Amanda, to be fair.
So you say you do a bit of everything. So tell us more about that. Let's deep dive into it. So
okay. Yeah, so I am essentially trained as a textile designer. So for the last 20 odd years, more than that, I have been designing print and pattern for clothing, whether that be women's wear, formal casual, athleisure, swimwear, kids wear from baby to tween, like the print graphics, anything like that's on your t-shirt or your clothes, any kind of pattern. And also homewares. So I've worked for most of the high street, designing homewares product and fashion graphics and print and pattern. But I also, because I think if you have that creativity in you, I don't know if you agree or not, but it seeps its way into other areas.
Yeah,
so you
100%.
find yourself kind of picking up lots of different things. So I do some photography as well, and I picked up my camera again after not touching it for years due to COVID and all the rest of it. So couldn't get any work because I sort of do a tiny bit of modeling on the side as well. So because I wasn't getting much work, I just thought, well, I'm just going to do my own portraits. And I was heavily inspired by one of my other friends who's a great photographer, Candy Photography, and she was doing these prompts throughout lockdown. I was like, oh, do you know what, I'm just going to join in. And I fell in love with my camera again, started taking lots of self-portraits, and then as things started to turn back to normal, started doing quite a few other just portraits and branding photography for other people. So yeah,
and I love that. And actually how I met Luna was she was my first ever non-family member who I shot. And it was really cool, and we met really early, and we tried to blag our way into the train station, which didn't work. And they were like, oh no, you have to buy a train ticket to take photos on the train station. And I was like, well, you wouldn't have known though, would you? So
but they didn't want us to do that. There is the rule. Obviously we should always ask where we're photographing if it's okay to photograph, but we were being a bit chancery and just seeing if we could just seeing what options were around. And so
it was, we only wanted a couple, not a whole shoot, but hey.
Yeah.
So you currently teach at the local college, right?
Yeah
Design.
So I tutor graphic design for level 3 students, so that's like HND and foundation, and we just basically give them hopefully all the skill set they need and all of the life skills they need to take them on either to industry or further education, like for degrees and what have you. So yeah,
amazing.
I do that.
So you've got like your fingers in a lot of hats, right?
And I also make headdresses and t-shirts too, so yes,
which are amazing. Guys, I'm just gonna swap places again because my battery's running low on my laptop and I can't reach it from here. I'm really sorry. We'll cut this bit out.
But that's an awful lot about me, and obviously I know quite a bit about you, Steph. But John, tell me about yourself. How did you get into what you've been doing, and how long, and all the rest of
Yeah.
it.
We got a whole episode on that. If you want to go back now,
Yeah, yeah.
like,
I
um,
will.
no, but like what you were saying as far as creativity, so you know, Steph's background, she was in theater and does marketing, and then got into photography, right? Like a daisy chain of creative. My two college degrees, one's in marketing, one's in architecture. I spent time as a user experience designer, and then I got into photography as a hobby, which then turned into a business. So it was one of those things where like you, like I had a camera for architecture school because of sites, and for our fake building project, we had to go to like actual locations and kind of figure out the site. And so I had a camera for that, but I didn't know how to use it other than just point and shoot in auto mode. And then when I graduated school, I had all this new free time because I was doing that at night while working full time. So then I had all my nights and weekends free because I was not doing architecture stuff. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just start to learn how to use this camera, and I just started walking around the city and just started doing that, and then got into Instagram, and then started meeting people and doing portraits, and then really just started to fall in love with the idea of converting somebody's story into an image, and how do I do that? And so that's kind of how I got into it. And then we were talking before the show. Steph and I literally met on TikTok because we were talking about like different ways in which her photography is fundamentally different from mine. Like hers is in that fantasy realm, and mine trends more towards the documentary style, where I'm trying to create most authentic story. Right. Yeah. And we were talking about how we have the same instrument, but we come up with different music. And we thought, oh, that's we were just talking about that. We said we should talk to other creatives, because there's a thing that we share, is that we make things and put them into the world, but our inspirations are different, our mediums are different, our outputs are different, and we want to talk to creatives about what inspires them. So I love the fact that you go. Do you ever like mix your mediums? Like, do you ever like start to look at like photography? Like you go out and you see like, let's say on a building where brick and metal connect, you go, oh, I'm going to take a photo of that because that's going to be a pattern. I'm going to turn that into something later. Like, do you ever like start to like merge them?
Yeah, so basically anything that's got texture on it, I love, because you don't know when you're going to need a gorgeous texture for either a graphic design or just a bit of interest in a photo. And quite often in some of my textile design, I've utilized some of my photography, especially things like flowers and things like that. So yeah, I love a mishmash of everything. And then like the digital collages that I do as well, I will often use elements from photography or print, or everything in.
The designs I've seen are really bold and bright, a bit like your personality, to be fair.
Yeah.
So it's quite bold, it's quite bright.
It's in black today.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that's unlike you, but yeah,
I know. But my t-shirt does say less bitter, more glitter, so we kind of are there.
I'll let you off. So, with your band, how often do you play with your band?
So we moved up to Lincolnshire, which is about 2 hours away from where we were in Hertfordshire, so 2 hours north, just over a year ago, and we had our band down there, and then obviously we moved and things were a bit tricky, so we've kind of had to start again. So we are a new old band. So myself and my partner, I mean, we've been going for a fair few years together in the band. And so we've just recently got our bassist and our drummer, and we are rehearsing once a week, and we are hoping to be gig ready again very soon. So we are
very cool.
Sorry?
It's very cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're called the Real Mean Streaks, and we're kind of more neo-billy than rockabilly. So we're sort of got a bit more of a more modern and slightly dirtier sound than like, just traditional rockabilly. And yeah, so it's good fun.
That's very cool.
And do you like, so from music and design and photography, but like you're sourcing different influences. Do you find that your sources of influence are very similar in how you approach your different art forms, or you say, or does your mind shift? Like, your music is influenced by this and your design, like, or do you start to see some blend in influences?
That's a really good question. So the best way I can describe it is, so on my Pinterest page, I've got like 200 boards of ridiculous inspiration. Like
I've got loads too.
everything, everything inspires me. And depending on what I'm doing, I almost treat it like a client brief. So for instance, the photography I tend to do is, you know, feel good photography, empowering portrait, you know, feeling good about yourself, seeing yourself through my lens with maybe something you wouldn't necessarily wear, or just, you know, I don't, it's difficult to describe, but it's about getting people to see themselves in a more powerful way than perhaps they haven't. And my inspiration for that depends on the person that I'm photographing. So I'll do a bit of a scout. A lot of the people I photograph I know already, so it makes it easier. But I will scout through, have a look at what they are, what they're about, what influences them, and I will tailor as much as possible my take on what I think they're about, but give it a bit of a twist so it's a bit out the comfort zone, and create something that's you know, colorful, powerful, bold, empowering, where they feel amazing, they look amazing, and they're like, wow. And that's my gain there. Music wise, it's very inspired by retro 50s rockabilly. So I sort of, it's the vintage side that comes out more than anything. But I really, I mean, I like all of the gorgeous 50s dresses, but I'm a sucker for that greaser side of it as well. Like, I love a leather jacket and some turn-up jeans, and so that's a mishmash. And also take reference from punk as well, because you can't not, because it's kind of,
Yes.
you know. So and there's always got to be sequins there, because it's, if you know, I love sparkle, I love sequins, so I do try and pull a teeny bit of me in there, but that's kind of the reference frame for that. And my personal design is very much based on things that I like. So glitter, sparkle, colorful, bold sayings, like, you know, that kind of thing in terms of my own t-shirts. But if I'm designing product for other people, again, it's very much my twist on their brief. So I'll have a loose guideline of what's required. I'll go away, I'll come back with some in-your-face mood boards of what I think this is, commercially viable, ticking off the boxes of what they're looking for, but also a little bit different, a little twist, you know, a punch of color, because that's kind of what I'm about. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question.
Yeah,
but
no, it totally does, because and I can definitely see that. So like let's say like my photography, I think I told Steph this before. You know, if it were just me, everybody's getting black and white images on metal, and they're going on exposed brick walls, and like that's what you're getting, right? But like that's not every client's style, and so the designer in me has to say, okay, you have a much warmer aesthetic. We are going for something in color. We're going for this style. Like it's the taking their voice and applying it through your lens, and it comes out with something that's uniquely theirs, that was made by you. Have you ever seen David Byrne did a TED talk of years ago on how architecture has defined sound, and he starts out with like birds in different regions, and depending on where they live, they have different, the same species of bird will sing differently because of the environment that they're in. And then he went through music, and he was like, Gregorian chants only work in Gothic cathedrals because that was the echoing of the sound. He said, you know, arena rock only works in open air arenas. And he said the New York punk scene doesn't happen unless you have these little small venues like CBGBs. Like he said, the Ramones don't play arenas, they play these little clubs because that's where their sound makes sense. And so like, have you seen like that, like through like as you were coming up as a musician, to start to say, I'm redefining my sound based upon, okay, this is the kind of space that feels warm and welcoming to me?
Do you know what? It's interesting, because we don't have the luxury of kind of picking where you can always perform. I mean, so we've performed previously we'd performed at quite a lot of festivals, which is amazing. I mean, that's my favorite is a festival setting, because the
Oh,
crowd.
what festivals? I want to know.
Oh, so Eden Festival up in
Oh,
Scotland.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
just local, just like local beer festivals and stuff. We played
Oh, I love
the
it, love it.
Ace Cafe in London, one of their
Nice.
hot rod nights. We did the Acklam Village Market on Portobello Road. So it's really difficult
That's
because
cool.
yeah. All of the venues have very different setups, very different PAs, very different. You've got, you're relying on your sound engineer is your best friend if you're lucky enough to have one there. But the spaces are so different, and you can really hear it sometimes, and it can be a bit off-putting because you're thinking, oh my god, this does not sound I mean, it still sounds like other people probably wouldn't notice, but you can tell yourself the sound's incredibly different. But I think for us, that kind of festival venue is the best sound setup.
And do you write your own songs, or do you do covers?
We do covers and we do originals. So
love that. And just going back to the textile and design stuff. So when you say you work with brands, have you kind of approached them and gone, oh, I've seen this brand, which I think my stuff would be really good for, and kind of pitched to them? Or do they reach out to you because they've seen, I don't know, your Instagram or a website or anything like that? Like, how do you kind of work that?
So in the first instance, my textile design and homewares design, I was either freelancing or working directly for the company. So like I say, I've worked for the likes of House of Fraser, Next, Tesco, Matalan, Debenhams, like loads of different.
That's some big players there.
So in that respect, you kind of end up going through specialist places to find that kind of role, that kind of job. And I've been very lucky. I've had quite a few bosses that I've worked with who have ended up at a new place, and they've gone, fancy coming and joining us? And I've been, so it's really good. Don't underestimate making good contacts and networking, because you don't know when it's going to serve you. And I've had a few of my jobs through recommendations from people that I've worked with before, so it's all, that's been amazing. I've been very fortunate, and I'd like to think that that's also a credit to my work as well, so that they know that they can get what they need from me, and I'm a go-to. So that's brilliant. In the realms of the stuff that I do off of Instagram, it's more the photography that I end up approaching and being approached with more than the textile design, because it's almost like I don't know, there's some sort of separation there, and I don't know why. I don't go and chase it for textile design as much as I go chasing for photography. I don't know why I've got that thing there. But
do you prefer photography, do you think? Is that your preferred kind of creative outlet?
No, I like having many things. If I was just doing the one thing, I'd be bored. I need, as my brain, how my brain works is I need several things going on, and I need variation, and I need to dip in and out of different media. So I'm
do you sleep? Because like, how do you fit it all in?
I may be, can you tell?
So I wonder, I'm guessing it's like a platform block for you. Like Instagram was originally a photo sharing app. It's now it's now like fundamentally different. Like it used to just be you share photos and then that was the end of it. Now it's like this all-in-one jack of all trades, like trying to copy every other social platform out there. So I wonder if it's just like, all right, Instagram is just like you have it in your head, and Pinterest is for design and patterns and things like that. Like real quick, because I'm going to forget otherwise, but I want to circle back. Like, so do you have like the most unique merch table of any band showing? Like are your concert tees okay, like everybody's got to stop by and get one of these, because it's like it's just going to be unique in design.
I did have some quite cool band tees, and they were obviously a nod to kind of like 80s rockabilly. So I had a series where I had a devil, I had a skeleton face with a quiff, and I had a wolf. So it was all kind of that vibe. But Yeah, so I need to get cracking with the new stuff, because obviously it's been a little while in the making, and I've designed our logo for the Real Mean Streaks, and I'll be doing some cool t-shirts. Yeah.
So exciting. And talk to us about your headdresses. So how did that come about? Or is it just another thing that you thought of, or did you think of it for photo shoots, or did you just like wearing them? Or
So I've always been a dresser who is a little bit out of the norm. I'm just going to go and grab one so I can show you as well, actually.
okay.
I'll grab a couple.
These are cool. I've seen them on Instagram.
Yeah. So I've always liked making a statement with dress, and I think that's also what comes through in the photography, and I like sort of, I like my subjects to also really explore their personal style and kind of push it a bit. But I love fancy dress, and I like dressing up in crazy different stuff. And I've been shopping in charity shops since I was 14, and always looking for something unique and individual. And here's something. Here's a little festival piece, which you probably can't see because I need to get really low. I'll have to lift you up. Look. So this is
yeah.
tinsel and cable tie affair with mirror balls on. I forgot I've got my rubbish background on. You can't really see. So I've got a really boring striped wall. I thought that will never do. I need to get one of those. I need to get some of my prints on the wall. We are in the middle of decorating, so it's and then I've got this crazy pom-pom glitter headband, which is just, yeah.
That is crazy, but I'm here for it. And
So,
do you use these for photo shoots, or do you sell them?
Yeah, so I sell them on Etsy, and I also make them for shoots. And I seem to have made quite a lot of lovely photographer friends and model friends and stylist friends. So it's all a bit of a collaborative kind of thing, where if I know somebody's doing shoot, or and you can say, oh, I've got some things that we can use, or somebody might say, oh, it's just this lovely collaborative space where you can just bounce off of each other and work with like-minded people and just dress up and go crazy. I love it.
I love that.
It's funny, like with the first one you showed, the like with the disco ball, I'm totally picturing like a mylar backdrop, like the silver mylar backdrop with like almost like a flapper dress, but made of like disco ball material, like just have like this whole vibe, and just say we're just embracing the reflectiveness of this, and then just bouncing light all over it, and just see what happens. Yeah,
definitely. In fact, I do have some similar shoots, and I've got this amazing kimono. There's this amazing lady, and she runs a store called Fumbelina's, and she also makes headdresses and these amazing sequined kimonos, of which I have a couple. And this goes perfectly well. My this mirrorball one with my mirror moon goes perfectly well with this silver. It's just like this drapey, gorgeous silver and black thing, and it's just light everywhere. So yes, you're right on it. That's exactly it.
I love that. I love that. How do you because this is a lot of like creativity can be very time consuming in whatever kind of medium you're doing. So how do you kind of navigate your time with having a job teaching and doing photography and doing the band stuff and writing music and doing the textile stuff and doing freelance stuff? Like, how do you navigate that? How do you keep on top of everything?
I don't really know.
Oh.
So I've got my 2 days a week, which I know I can devote to teaching. I've got my 2.5 days that I know I need to do my freelance. I do freelance on top of the freelance, so anything else I can kind of slot in wherever. The music, I know I've got that on one evening a week, so that's fine, and I know I need to practice one evening a week, and then I've got my whole weekend, and that's however long you want to make it. I don't know. I just seem to do it and fit it in, and I think you have that. When you're really, really focused, or when you're on a bit of a mission to get something done, like you can do like 16 hours work in 8 hours sometimes. It's that thing that's like heavy duty focus, and when you need to pull it out, you can just like zone in, get it done. And that's the other thing about the creativity as well. And I don't know if you guys find the same, especially in the design work. So if I'm working on some textile designs or so I'm designing some party wear and decorations as well at the moment. If I'm on a roll and it's in flow, I have to keep going with that until it's dead. Because if I stop and break, it's gonna ruin the momentum. And if I know I'm on a roll and I'm in flow, I know that I'm going to work extremely focused and extremely fast during that period. So I just roll with it.
I call it being in the zone, the zoning area.
Yeah.
You're like, I'll stop, I'm in the zone.
And there are other times where I might be designing and I'll be like, oh, do you know what? This is just not happening for me today. Like literally, I've spent the last hour pushing an image around the screen and I'm getting nowhere. So I know myself well enough now to know, okay, right, we'll break, stop, do something else. I've got enough other things going on that I can put down and pick up. And I think that's also why I like lots of things, because I can dip in and out when it suits or when I'm inspired.
Yeah.
I can also unlock other things. Like when you're stuck, like I can't solve this problem. But if I can solve these 4 problems, I may end up with the solution to my original problem. Because I'm working, because it's still in your head. You're just working through it differently. Like
I think creatives, well, all the creatives that I've ever worked with anyway, I've always said that thing, like if you're in the zone, then you can keep going and you're almost like tunnel vision. But then there's other times when I'm like, oh, what am I having for dinner? Oh, I need to go and send that email. And you're looking at the window and like, okay, I need to stop this because it's going to produce crap work.
Well, have you ever done this? I mean, for both of you, like from a photography standpoint, there are times where I finish up a session and I just bring my camera home and then I go do other stuff. And there's other times where I cannot wait to put it into Lightroom to start to go through these images, because there was something magical about a photo that I have to go see right now and I have to edit it, and there's no way that I'm going to get this out of my head for the rest of the day. And it's just like one of those things that sometimes it's like I'll wait a week and sometimes I got to do it immediately. And it's just
I totally get that.
Absolutely.
So you said you said at the start, you said a certain saying when you're into a lot of things, and you said you said a saying. What was it?
I'm a multi-potentialite.
Multi-potentialite. I love that. So one conversation I wanted to have with you, because I think it's quite interesting. When I was at school, it's going to make me sound really old now, but when I was at school, creativity was kind of a nice to have, but not really, like that was it. It was a nice to have. And so even though I was quite academic, I was in top set and stuff, but I was a creative. So but I always felt like that was kind of that's not really important. Whereas now I feel like that's what companies are looking for more and more, because they want to stand out online. They want to think of things that other companies haven't thought of, so that they, think outside the box. So if someone is listening now who's whatever age, very young, or they might be wanting to change career and they're very multi-creative, shall we say, what advice would you give to them? Because they might be feeling a bit lost and like, oh, my skills needed, but you're living proof that you can do all those things at once, right? So what would you say to them?
Well, this is again a very interesting, I keep saying, well, this is very interesting because this is like a my rule book, not an everybody rule book, because I also have continually been told, don't go into all these things, find your niche, focus, do one thing well. That's never worked for me, because that's not how my brain works. I can't just stick to one thing. I get distracted, I get bored. I need the other things in there. And then because I can do other things, I'm going to do other things. And, it is tricky, because the general opinion is that you should find your focus and stick with that. So it's a bit of a
which does work for some people.
Yeah.
But
so my advice would be to somebody in that situation where they've got lots of things that they love doing, is to carry on doing what you do. Creative play is so bloody important. Not even what you get at the end of that creative play, but the process of that creative play is more important than the product itself. So even if you are doing, okay, so maybe you've decided to focus down this route, still do the things that spark joy, because it's so important for your well-being to embrace that and let yourself have that and indulge in that. That's my personal opinion. And
Yeah.
I would say just carry on honing your skills. If you are able to, you might need to just focus on one thing just to get the cash coming in and pay the bills and all the rest. But don't leave your other things stranded. If they still interest you and they still pique your interest, they still spark you joy, just hone your skills and just keep doing them, because you never know when that skill set's going to come up. I mean, a prime example is in a lot of my roles, I have, I've been just a whatever the title is on paper, and more often than not, it's ended up spreading across department because, oh, actually, we need to do this and we're short on staff. So, can we just, do you know what I mean? You end up, you naturally end up kind of filtering into many more things anyway. I think if you're a naturally curious and creative person, you end up winding your way into loads of different stuff anyway. So
And I think that it's oftentimes we as a society, we mix the conversations, right? There's the things that you're involving yourself in, and then from a branding standpoint, how are you marketing that to an audience? And you may decide, I'm marketing me as a multifaceted personality, and that's what I'm going to be. Or you could say, I'm going to market this as an entity, this is an entity, this, because they're fundamentally different audiences, and so I want to speak to them differently. I'm still going to be doing all three. I mean, if you look at like, if you look at like businesses, like there's conglomerates out there that like you wouldn't realize own all of these things. Like if you go look at like, trying to think of some of the like Nestle, like just like if you look at like all the things that Nestle owns, it's just like it's wild. But each product has its own conversation with the audience. But as a conglomerate, they run everything. And even as a person, we can do that because we have our passions, we have our hobbies, we have this, and that could be the brand. Let's say Apple, when Apple went from making computers to making MP3 players, which was like, what? Like it's just like that's not in their thing, but they pivoted and they said we're a consumer electronics brand now, and then they decide to do that. So there's ways you could do it, but I think sometimes we mix the conversation. Say you got to niche down. Well, you have to be able to speak to your audience. What is that? And it may be you only have to say the one thing over and over again to this audience, but this audience wants to hear about the person who's involved in 11 things,
So that's a really good point as well. And also it's almost trying to career proof your skills as much as possible, because now you're open to several aspects. Like I think that was one of the big things for me is also, especially being freelance, security is not always there. So you need to be able to turn your hand to X, Y, and Z just to make the dollar and be okay, So, but I'm interested, John, I know all of us here do many different things, but John, what would your advice be in that scenario? So the same question that Steph asked me.
Well, my advice to everybody who like any of my friends who have kids around like high school age going into the next stage, my whole thing is you don't have to worry about like what you're going to major in. Learn how to learn, because the only thing we are absolutely certain of is that things are going to be different 20 years from now than they are today. And the fact is there's a lot of industries that exist today that there still isn't a degree for because academia hasn't caught up yet. And so I've had many different careers. I have a couple different degrees. I'm a professional photographer now. Like I didn't study photography professionally, but I learned from YouTube and things like it. But I have the capacity to learn. And I think that now I don't know about how your school system here is. And Steph, you and I talked about like you didn't have like a whole lot of arts programs in your schools. Like here, I went to a high school that was very much arts focused. Like I started learning music when I played trombone from third grade on. And then in high school, you had to take a quarter of the year and you do art, you do music, you do and you do industrial arts, which is like wood shop, you do home economics where you learn culinary arts. And then your senior year, you can just say, I'm going to choose one path and I'm going to do that every day. So I had an art class every day. So I went to a studio and I did clay and painting and sketching and everything else. And here in the US, like over the it's one of the programs that gets cut when they talk about funding. They're like, all right, well, we'll get rid of the arts because we got to focus on the science, the technology, and so my architectural thesis project in architecture school was a community arts center, because I found studies that if you integrate arts into education, it helps kids think differently. So understanding painting, or there was actually a study, if you read nonfiction, you have more empathy than the average person, because because reading nonfiction forces you to put yourself into the shoes of another human being. And so you have more empathy. If you've learned to play music, you're probably better with mathematics than somebody who didn't grow up playing music. And all of these things, you're just like, these are all integrated in the brain. Like, there's no one way to learn, but like, if you learn several different things, you unlock other parts of your brain. Albert Einstein used to play the violin when he was struggling with a physics equation. Like, that's how he would work it. He would just play the violin casually, and that was a way for him to unlock another part of his brain. So I'm a firm believer of learn all the things that you're interested in. Just, you don't have to ever use them, but you will somewhere.
Do you know what? So there's a phrase, and I don't know if am I right to swear on your podcast?
Oh yeah.
When I upload these, I purposely mark it like it may be explicit and it's definitely not for kids. So just like go.
Say the phrase, fuck around and find out. Oh my God, try everything. Try everything, see where it leads. And that is what we are trying to. So I'm totally with you. So the first thing that gets cut is always the arts, whether it's music, whether it's drama, whether it's like, you know, actual physical painting. And it's so frustrating because, like I say, creative play is so important, not only in the way that you've described in terms of allowing us to think about problem solving and, you know, critical thinking skills, but also like take it right back to basics. It's one of the only ways that you can communicate with really traumatized children is through drawing, you know, and
it's such a connection to the human experience. All arts are like, that's the glue that makes us human. Is the art started with cave drawings, right? Like art existed before, you know, before humans left the caves. Like, you know, like,
and this thing about being creatively curious or being curiously creative. So like wanting to learn everything, wanting to try everything, finding out about everything, and losing that. My biggest advice to, and this is what we're trying to instill in the young adults that we have at the college, forget what you've been told about what's right and what's wrong about art, because how do you define good art anyway? It's so subjective.
Right.
Forget about being perfect, forget about what's correct, or oh well, no, we have to learn this way, or we have to mark it on the paper this way. No, fuck that. Fuck around and find out. Make mistakes, mess it up, do something. If it's shit and it's terrible, I don't care. You've produced a piece of art that's amazing, you know.
Well, it's like
rid of the fear of being wrong and making a mistake.
Yeah,
I always say to people, like,
put a post out about this today. Sorry, go on, John.
No, I was gonna say, I always say to people, like, from a standpoint of like, you hear this all the time. This is objectively good, this is objectively bad. Like, especially when it comes to film, there's a lot of like film critics on online now who have to complain about everything. And with art, if you're really honest with yourself, it either speaks to me or it doesn't speak to me, but it doesn't make it good or bad. It's just, it evokes something in me or it didn't. But that's about my human connection to that piece of art. And whether or not I connect to it does not make it not art. It's just that doesn't speak to me. But this does. And that's how we also learn about ourselves, is when we look at a piece of art, we say, this really means something to me. Okay, why does that mean something to me? And you get into that space. No, I love that. And what's funny, it's like you're using the phrase "fuck around and find out" as a discovery tool. Like I've only heard it in terms of like, you know, you cross me and I will end you. Like, it was you know, like you're
saying that to her kids.
like you're in the find out stage of your life now. Like,
no threats, only fun, folks.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I love taking that phrase and turning it into like, just go make something. And Steph and I talked about this, like, I think even before it was probably our first like conversation before we recorded a conversation.
Right.
It's like, we're going to make this, it's going to be terrible. It's like, the video quality isn't going to be professional, the audio quality, but we're going to make it and we're going to put it out into the
Put it out
world
there.
and we'll figure it out. Like, because until it's out into the world, it doesn't mean anything. You know?
Yeah. You gotta stop that fear, and you just gotta go and do it anyway. And who cares if it doesn't work, and who cares if it's not what you wanted? You've learned something, you've created something, you've done something, and you just keep building on that.
Right. And then what's if you put it out and then decide you don't like it? And so what? So what? What does it? There's no awful consequences.
Yeah.
I look at some of my earlier photography now and I'm like, oh God, I put that out. But at the time I was like, yes, I love this. But now I'm like, I can see that yeah, it's not so good now, but I still put it out.
But that's showing your development and your creativity, and you're upskilling and upskilling and upskilling, perfecting and refining.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So that's giving, and what a gift to be able to look at some old work and go, oh, do you know what? Look at what I'm doing now, rather than looking at it going, oh, do you know what? That's shit. Like, reframe that. Jesus, look at what I'm doing now. You know, from here to here. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I
and
personally
it's quite
love
nice
seeing the progress.
See the journey.
Yeah.
It's what? Sorry.
No, I'm saying I personally love seeing the progress. Like, if you go to like a museum, like focus on an artist. So like, let's say a couple years ago, I went to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona, and they have his early sketches as he's starting to figure it out, right? And what he was going to be as an artist. And like, most people think of his Cubism phase, but if you go back about 15 years, he was a hyper-realist, and he was figuring out what kind of artist he wanted. And just seeing that, if you walk through the space, you see the history of his little sketches, his little doodles where he's figuring it out. And he's like, okay, this is how I want to be. Like, I love seeing that. It's the thought process that counts.
That's the magic, indeed. And we're also inspired by so many different things and so many different people. And there's people that I meet and there's work that I see, and I'm like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to take some of that and sprinkle it in there and mix it up in my pot and see what happens, you know? And it's, I think, you know, it's that saying, isn't it? Which I'm going to get totally wrong about, something or rather, oh geez, what is it? A designer copies and then no, what is it about stealing art and actually?
Picasso said that. He said good artists borrow, great artists steal.
There you go.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, but it's about taking what you've seen and rehashing it through your lens again. It's you know, processing it through your brain, through your lens, rather than just doing a carbon copy and your version of. It's like, right, that's amazing. How can I get my head around that and twist that into my aesthetic to produce something?
And this is where, and Steph and I had this conversation in a previous episode where we were talking about like the use of AI and where the AI, and so AI can only repeat what it knows, and what it knows though is the entirety of the universe. Where artists are different is that we're still doing basically the same thing, but the things we're exposed to is different, and the things that we responded to, that we kept in our memory banks, is only through our lens. So it can't replicate what we do because it just has unfettered access to everything, where we have very specific things that meant something to us in a moment, and then that becomes something else later. And that's where the human experience comes in. It can replicate a collection, but it can't replicate the soul of why did I choose that to be inspired by.
Exactly.
So I have a whole collection on both Instagram, on Pinterest, on just images. It could be a photo, it could be just an image of a design, it could be like a random lamppost in a street, but something about it I like, and I'll take little bits like, right, I'm gonna be, or it might even be the way someone's hair is swishing, because I quite like to do like moving hair in my photos. I'm like, oh, I like the way that looks, and then I'll try to recreate it or my version of it. But it's not necessarily the whole image, it'll just be like one little aspect. I'm like, oh, I like her facial expression there, or the lamppost, as I said, or whatever. But I didn't realize, I just thought that was a thing I did, but apparently it's a thing.
But it's if you look at the history of art, art has always been like
It's
there's a difference
cyclical.
between the history books and the arts, right? The arts are your arts are reflecting back the emotions of the time and whatever, and through that artist's eyes of how they were feeling in that moment. And so those types of inspirations, like that's what tells us where you were in that moment. And if you can break it apart, if you can actually decipher it, you can tell a story of that artist mindset in that moment. And I find that fascinating.
That is,
Yeah.
that is indeed. And I jumped in across you, I apologize. But the whole thing about art and design as well is it's cyclical. Like everything is like, you know, we just fight, everything comes around. Like nothing we ever produce is individual and not been done before. Like you can look back and find it somewhere. You know, everything's been inspired by something before. So we're all kind of like, you know, churning all these, recycling these ideas and reforming these ideas and adding new stuff in. And yeah.
Well, if you think about it, there's a finite number of parts, right? The color spectrum is finite. The number of musical notes is finite. The number of words in our language, you know, we can add to it, but we don't add words that often, is finite. So it's really just taking those key elements and putting them into a new order and see how does that feel. And it's just a little bit different, you know.
So Luna, think about all the things you do. What's your kind of, and I ask this for most of our guests, what's your kind of pie in the sky dream? Is it to being able to continue to be creative each day, or if you've got like a goal that you're working towards for each thing?
Do you know what? Right, if I could do anything I wanted, if I could have anything I wanted, if I could run my business, whatever, however I wanted, is that essentially what you're asking? That's the way I'm going to take it. All right.
Yeah.
Right. So the ideal scenario would be a plot of land somewhere, ideally a couple of barns that I can convert and literally have a creative space in each corner. So I'd have a photography set there, you know, with a studio and a dark room, so I could do proper film as well. I'd have a corner for painting. I'd have a corner over there with all the dress stuff on and dress up and, you know, shoots and everything going on there. I'd have another corner with all the music stuff, and yeah, it would literally just be this big space. And my partner's very creative as well, so he plays guitar, he sings, he tattoos, he does pinstriping, he makes lots of things with his hands like signs and, you know, revamps furniture and stuff. So, and he would love a hot rod, so there would also be another barn full of old classic cars and hot rods. And yeah, so and just somebody just paying us to do it for free, really. I mean, you know.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounds amazing. Like I would love to have my own studio and just be doing like various shoots.
Yeah,
like,
somebody that says, here's a blank check, go and do whatever the hell you fancy.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably have a little every so often back, and yeah.
So I was going to ask you, like have you gone down the path of like large scale, like for your band, for the festivals, doing your own set design, like really going and
no, I think that's a step beyond me at the moment. I did design a little backdrop, so, you know, and I do actually have a route to get something done like that now if I wanted to. Yeah, but at the moment I'm just kind of, I mean, when you're in those festival scenarios, generally your backdrop,
you're in and out, yeah,
and it's quite nice. So, but yeah, I mean, that would be amazing to do some crazy set design. Oh my God. I think I would never sleep. If I had this barn, I would never sleep. I would just be like living off 10 pints of coffee.
We both live in Lincolnshire. Maybe we should go in halves and we'll.
I know, we need to go and find an old farmer and chat them up and buy a bit of land.
There is actually, and it's been there for years, it's been there since I was a kid. Between Sleaford and Lincoln, on the left-hand side in the middle of the field, there's an old abandoned building.
Let's go.
And it has literally been there for years. And I've always thought, why doesn't someone buy that up and do something with it? And it's literally like just a shell of a building. I'm like, could so do like a studio there. It's probably haunted, but
yeah.
But that's really cool. So the whole pie in the sky is studio space to do lots of things.
Lots of
I
things,
heard,
lots of collabs as well. Lots of collabs with all my creative friends. Like, you know,
yeah,
just a whole, yeah.
I love that. I love being around other creative people and seeing, like, I've loved this conversation because I can see you getting really passionate about it, which makes me go, yeah, yes. And I get excited as well. And like, I just love it when people are excited about what they're talking about, because it gets it, like, you bounce off each other as creative, don't you?
Yeah.
I heard you mention your husband does something, and I didn't know what it was. You said he tattoos, he does furniture upcycling, and then he's hot
he does
rodding.
pinstriping, you know, like
Pinstriping. What was
yeah.
that? What's pinstriping?
So, you know, on the hot rods where you get all that amazing hand painted shapes and lines.
Okay.
So he does that. And yeah, so he's I've designed my tattoos and he's actually put them on for me. So he's very
Oh, wow.
very clever.
Oh wow, that's very cool.
And he sings. He's super creative and you know, really good, like with like, I'm so lucky. Like, so we moved into our house about a year ago and there's lots of things that need doing. He's one of those that can just like, oh yeah, that a door frame, yeah, I'll just sort that out. Or, oh yeah, plaster a wall, no problem. I'll just he's one of those. He's just brilliant.
Nice.
Yeah, so
That's very cool. We're gonna stop wrapping it up soon, but I have a few more questions if that's okay. I'll quickly squeeze them in. Okay, so if someone wanted to hire you, do you do like weddings and stuff with your band?
yeah, we haven't done. We mainly do festivals and little you know, little beer festivals, local festivals, car shows, things like that. Maybe like a rockabilly night or you know, particular whatever. We haven't done, but yeah, I mean, probably open to anything, to be honest.
Okay, and where can they find that info about your band?
So at the moment, everything is on Instagram. So for the band, it's Instagram and it's the Real Mean Streaks. So we've got our old stuff on there. We're yet to input the new stuff because we're just, like I said at the beginning, we're kind of just getting together and just getting ready to go. And then my art stuff and my photography and everything else is all in my bio. I have a link tree on my Instagram, which is adorn_with_attitude. So yeah, kind of says it all.
Perfect name. Love it.
Yeah. And then in my link tree, it's got all of the bits and pieces that I do. So.
And if someone, like, whether they be a model or a designer or a makeup artist or anything like that, if they want to collab with you,
oh my god,
are you open?
Speak to me. Hit me up, DM me, I'm all ears. Yeah.
Okay, and you're open to any ideas?
Absolutely.
Perfect. And sorry, I'm only asking this because it's what I get asked. Do you travel, or do you prefer them to travel to you, or how would you work it?
Yeah, I'm prepared to travel. I do say that if it's any more than an hour, then it probably is going to incur travel expenses or travel costs.
Yeah.
So depending on what it is and where it is, yeah, I usually work together and we'll kind of like, we can either meet in the middle or do somewhere that's, you know, because a lot of my stuff's location rather than studio. But if I have, if they're after in particular a studio look or feel, then, you know, again, it's a, well, let's see what's local and let me speak to them, find out the costs first, and then we'll work things out. So yeah.
Okay. I think we're quite fortunate being in Lincolnshire that we're kind of smack bang in the middle, pretty much. So yeah, everything's kind of equal distance, except for like Scotland or something, which is really far. But most things are within easy-ish traveling distance. So yeah, cool. John, do you have any more questions before we wrap this up?
I do not. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you
so much.
Nice. It's honestly, I could talk to fellow creatives all day long and talk your ears off, and yeah.
Well, that's the whole point of this entire show is to talk to creatives and just have these conversations and put them out in the world and see if we can inspire somebody else.
Right, because if we're having them, other people must be having them and thinking them and be like, oh, I'm a creative, but I feel like I shouldn't do it, or I don't know if I'm good enough. Or
always do it, even if it's a side hustle. And you got to leave that fear behind, like the fear of failure. If you got that, man, you're going nowhere. You got to get rid of that shit straight away and just do it.
And I think that, there's also and at least for me anyway, or at least in my world, it was always like, people always associated creative with art and painting, and there's people who are very talented in that, but creativity shows up in a lot of different places. And so, like you were saying, just exploring it, even if you're terrible, is going to help you somewhere else, because you're going to learn how to make a decision differently, because you went down that path, and what's the thing? Like, nobody started out as an expert. Like, nobody was. There's not a person on this planet who started out as an expert. Everyone who ever picked up a paintbrush or a camera or a musical instrument, they were terrible the first time they did it. And that's everyone. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
The post I put out today on Instagram, on my stories, I put, your first podcast will be shit. Your first piece of writing will be shit. Your first painting will be shit. Your first music recital will be shit. But you keep putting it out, and then you get better and better and better. And I was like, oh, chef's kiss. Beautiful. And as well, I don't know if you know this actually, Luna, I didn't start out photography to be a photographer. I started it as an extra skill from a 9-to-5 in marketing, and then someone was like, can I book you for a shoot? I was like, okay. and I was a bit nervous, and